Long time ago, I made a video talking about the downgrade of video games industry, and one of those games were Call of Duty franchise. One of the major points were the amount of propaganda that Call of Duty franchise had, especially the last couple of years. But a couple of days ago, I was actually wondering, which Call of Duty actually had the worst propaganda imaginable? My name is Sony, and these are the top 5 worst propagandas in Call of Duty campaigns. Of course, Cold War doesn't have that ridiculous propaganda as some other games have, but it doesn't mean that there isn't any. The most obvious is the portrayal of the Soviet Union and its people. Of course, most of the time you fight against communist people, and the main antagonist is actually Russian, who actually wants to invade and destroy the whole world, especially the United States. What a surprise, I guess. But what's more interesting is how they actually portrayed the West. You see, in several times in campaign, it's actually shown that the West also doesn't have peaceful or precise methods against Soviet Union, such as for example putting bombs in several places of Europe in case of Soviet Union invasion, or even the fact that they actually are using people as sort of cheap labor or decoys in order to achieve their goals, such as the main character. Of course, in this game the propaganda is softer towards the West other than to the East, but in either case, I feel like this game actually deserves a little bit more credit because actually it tried to portray the grey morality and the grey sort of side of politics and wars, especially during this very complicated and disgusting sort of time in humans' history. And so with that, I actually have a little bit soft spot for Call of Duty Cold War. As ridiculous as it is, but it's still not a bad campaign in terms of propaganda. So let's move on.
Charging, 3, 2, 1, clear!
This is the place where everything becomes a little bit more interesting, especially the portrayal of the enemies of the United States. And those are, of course, Russians in Call of Duty Modern Warfare franchise. So, in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, you actually fight mostly against Russians, again, in a scenario of World War III, which sounds epic. However, the actions of Russian military is confusing, to say the least. At one time, they fight against the United States as normal army, on the other times, they start to execute people in Hollywood fashion, and in other times, they just kill civilians for absolutely no reason. And this is confusing because there's not a clear line between men of Makarov, the main antagonist of the franchise, and the military, which in reality served to President of the Russian Federation, which was actually captured. And I think that this was intentional because they really wanted to make sure that Russians look like terrorists or antagonists, so they didn't show the clear line between sort of military and mercenaries. So the player could see Russians as a clear threat to both military and civilians, which actually makes them terrorists in the real world, but whatever. The fact is, the United States Army never does anything close to that. It seems like they're just heroes in this sort of scenario, and Russians are just invaders. Although they did have some kind of motivation, although it's a little bit ridiculous. You see, basically Russians thought that in the second game it was Americans who actually created the terrorism against Russians in the airport. But you see, they have video cameras and they know the terrorists, and most of them are actually Russians, so what is their motivation for war? Just for fun, or is just a bad motivation and bad script? I think it's mostly both of them. But at least in this franchise, Russians actually had some kind of motivation to hate the West and their enemies. Although it's still kind of ridiculous that they show that Russians kill civilians while the United States don't in any sort of scene, but still, at least they have some kind of motivation, so I guess it's fine, but a little bit on edge. And now we're coming to the place where everything is becoming a little bit ugly. This game is the perfect example of West propaganda against Soviet Union, and there are just so many things wrong with this one. So the main point that I actually want to show you is not even United States campaign, which they actually portrayed quite realistically as far as I'm concerned, but to actually the Soviet side. So you actually start in a boat during Stalingrad War, and the first thing you see is actually the barrier troops. Their mission was to maintain military discipline and prevent the flight of servicemen from the battlefield, which happens in every sort of military imaginable. But one huge stereotype that it seems like West have on Soviet Union barrier troops is that when discipline is ruined, they just start shooting people, which is stupid. If barrier troops actually shot so many soldiers just who retreated, Soviet Union would probably just lost the war. In reality, the number of military personnel that actually broke the discipline and were actually shot is actually less than 1%. One of the examples is 1941. Of course, this was the beginning of the war, and there was a huge panic because so many people were dying in the first months of war, and the enemy was storming through the country like crazy. And the official report states during that year there was 657,000 retreating, of which 25,000 were arrested, of which actually 10,000 were sentenced to death, and others were actually sent to active duty again. This was the highest number of retreating Soviet troopers during the whole war, and after this the military had become more and more disciplined. Another ridiculous thing that was portrayed in this game is how the Soviet army was supplied. In the beginning of the mission, you can see that some soldiers actually get some rifles, others get magazines, and others just get potatoes. And this is just absolutely ridiculous. First of all, you need to understand that yes, Soviet army did lack certain weapons and firearms, but these were automatic weapons. They never had problems with supplying army with Mosin-Nagant rifles, and there was never an instance where army didn't have enough weapons or grenades. Of course, the lack of automatic weapons actually did have a toll, especially when Germans actually already had MP38s, MP40s, etc. And so that's why British and Americans actually sent a lot of automatic rifles to Soviet Union. But again, there is not a single instance where Soviet military was lacking firepower and people were just running with potatoes or magazines or unloaded weapons, which is just stupid. If you just imagine something like this happening to the army in this sort of time, in this sort of scale, the army will just collapse. This is how it works. But I gotta say that most of this is actually not the problem of the developers. It actually comes from the movie that I think this game was inspired from, The Enemy of the Gates, because everything that this movie actually portrays Soviet Union is actually portrayed in the game. And so I believe the movie is something to blame. Movie is a real piece of crap, by the way. This was the game, and this was the time where a lot of people actually thought differently about a very disciplined, a very well supplied, and a very heroic army of Soviet Union, which is a shame, to be honest. But now, let's go away from Soviet Union a little bit, shall we? And so, to number 2. Modern Warfare 2019 is just something else in terms of propaganda. Russian military are portrayed just so bad that even Nazi soldiers were not portrayed that sort of terrorists during World War II, which they actually were.
The Russians make no distinction between Alcatel and your people.
And I make no distinction between Alcatel and the Russian army. They're both terrorists.
And you need to understand that Russian soldiers are actually an official Russian military as implied by the campaign. So it means that it's taking orders from the Russian government. And what? The Russian government actually ordered to kill so many civilians and to put tear gas in there? Like, what is the motivation behind all this? The motivation of such hate? And it's not like they're doing this just because it was an accident. No, they're actually deliberately doing this. Like Nazis did during the World War II in Soviet Union. And the most ridiculous part is, of course, the highway of death.
If they try to escape to the mountains, there is only one road, Tariq al-Maut, the highway of death. The Russians bombed it during the invasion, killing the people trying to escape. There is a village at the crossroads.
where it is implied that Russians actually bombed this highway and killed thousands and thousands of civilians, while in reality, this were the operation that was commanded by the United States, Canada, France, and United Kingdom, countries that are heroes in this game. In this game, the player actually cannot even unintentionally hurt any civilian personnel. Unlike Russian soldiers who just kill civilians and kids and women in every single cutscene. And you need to understand that in real war, civilian casualties will and always will happen. If you read recent news about Israel, you will understand that war is just not about precision, it's about making sure that you achieve your mission, that you complete your mission. And sometimes the price you pay for this achievement is a little bit too high. For me, Call of Duty 2019 Modern Warfare is not a campaign, it's not a game. It's just a disgusting propaganda of the West against the East. And it's very sad that more and more people, especially kids, play this game and believe every single word and every single frame of this piece of crap. And you're probably asking, why did I put it in the second place, not in the first one? Because I do believe that Modern Warfare 2019 has the worst propaganda imaginable. Well, the reason is a bit personal. You see, people say that Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019 was the first game where they put scenes of United States to the Russian Federation, highway of death for this instance. But there was actually another Call of Duty that actually put their scenes to someone else. And that is... This game has everything what you need from West propaganda. United States are heroes and they fight against the obvious villains, which are everybody that are not capitalistic. Vietnam, Soviet Union, China, well, basically everybody. So what do we have here? We have Soviet soldiers that worked with Nazi Germans to create the weapons of mass destruction. Those Soviets also captured German scientists to create nuclear weapons. It's kind of funny because United States also did that, especially NASA. But we're obviously not gonna talk about it. Interesting note here. This rocket is an actual Soyuz 2, but it wasn't an atomic bomb. It was actually a man-piloted ship. And Soyuz 2 was designed to make the first ever connection with another ship, Soyuz 1. But unfortunately, Soyuz 1 was destroyed and its pilot Vladimir Komarov was killed. And in the game, they showed this ship as a nuclear weapon. Yeah. Soviets who make Americans play Russian roulette and just kill them by hitting them with some blunt object. And something that absolutely pissed me off and the moment when I began to hate Call of Duty franchise, Vietnam War, and especially the usage of chemical attacks. Let's just hear it.
Clark created Nova 6, a nerve toxin that can rupture a body in seconds.
Dragovich's second in command, Kravchenko, tested in Vietnam. On them? On us? On his own? He doesn't care. Kravchenko, the fucking psycho, was spraying nerve gas all over Vietnam.
Sorry, are you implying that Soviet Union actually used chemical weapons against the United States and against Vietnamese? Are you fucking kidding me? I haven't found any proof of Soviet Union usage of chemical weapons during this war. But there was actually one chemical, called Agent Orange. And guess, which country actually used it? What happened to people who actually got hurt from this chemical? I'm pretty sure you can Google this, because I don't want this video to get demonetized. Interesting note here is that in the game all Vietnamese soldiers are men. Developers don't show any signs of women or children from North Vietnamese army, because obviously if you kill those people, you would be considered an evil person. But no, the United States in this game are pure heroes. Basically what I'm saying is that Call of Duty Black Ops, for me, is just disgusting because it pisses both on every single country that the United States even today considers to be their enemies. And what pisses me off even more is that because of this game, a lot of people actually turn away from the countries. And not only because of this game, but because of many propaganda that existed in Call of Duty franchise. To wrap this up, I just want to say that games are games. They're not books. They're not documentaries. They're nothing. They're just created for entertainment. They should never be considered real, and they should never be considered historically accurate. Because if you do believe everything that those games or any sort of media does, you just start to hate each other. And that's exactly what those kind of propaganda want. They want you to hate somebody for something that they didn't even do. And I do hope that people will not take any of those games seriously. Because if they do, there'll be more hate and more controversies. Something that only leads to more wars, more blood, and more casualties.
This is for the record. History is written by the victor. History is filled with liars. If he lives and we die, his truth becomes written and ours is lost.